Thank you very much for joining Animated Women as part of the European Women in Games Symposium. It's great to be here again. It's such a fantastic event, and it's so nice to see this incredible group of women and men here every year, I think. Fantastic job, David and Claire, as usual. So Animated Women UK, who are we and why are we here? So I've got some examples of animated women. That's us. That's the panel. We are an organization that was created in 2013 after an event I attended at the London International Animation Festival and Women in Film Festival in 2011 that featured animators, female animators on a panel. And after that event, I just thought, God, there's got to be something like this that's regular and happening, because as a female animator and a woman working in the animation and VFX industries, we didn't see a lot of each other. The numbers were quite low. So we started Animated Women in 2013. I held a launch at Mind Candy Studios and put together a board. And now we're a nonprofit limited company. We have 6 members on our board, and we focus on 5 aims, which are mentoring, networking, recruitment, showcasing, and education. Our mission is to positively support, represent, and encourage women in animation and VFX in the UK. And we are doing this because we want to see a change in our industries. We want to see more female characters on screen. We want to see more women running businesses. And we want to improve the statistics of more women in creative and technical leadership positions. Some quick stats around women in animation in Britain. So there are around 1,700 in animation and VFX. That's around 30% of those working in animation and VFX are women. In animation, most of them work in distribution, sales, and marketing, and in VFX, most of them work in production, client management, and admin. So we're not really in those lead tech and creative roles. Our industry is interesting because we have a group of women who are of childbearing age, but most of whom do not have children, which is a bit of an anomaly. We're also extremely highly educated as a statistic group. And it's interesting that we're still facing sexist barriers, and that comes from the research that we did 2 years ago from Animated Women UK. So that's why we think a group like this is important, as is Women in Games. So the panel we've got for you here today is excellent. I will introduce them quickly. Then each of them will be answering a question that we've put together based on their expertise. And finally, we'd like to take a couple of questions, or maybe just one, as we're running short on time. So I'll be chairing the panel today. My name is Lindsay Watson. I'm chair and founder of Animated Women UK, and I take care of all of the animation side of things. I have a co-chair, Louise Hussey, who works at Double Negative VFX. She does all the VFX stuff. And then we have leaders in careers, education, volunteering, and so on our board. I'm also an animation producer, have a company, Canuck Productions, and I'm currently head of animation at Kindle Entertainment. Today on our panel, joining me is Angela Salt, co-founder of Fun Crew. Angela is an independent content creator based in Southport in Liverpool. She's author of Spooky Skaters, which is a graphic novel done for Scholastic, and is formerly a successful illustrator and educator. She's recently launched Bear, Bud and Boo with global partners Technicolor and Brown Bag Films, and is developing an animated series around a dynamic team of gamers who just happen to be girls. So that's great. Bev Bush is a senior lecturer in games design at University of Central Lancashire. Her credits include BAFTA award-winning titles in games and children's TV, Cosgrove Hall Films, and Thames TV, and Traveller's Tales. Bev has worked with many large publishers, including BBC, ITV, Disney Interactive, Sony, Jim Henson, on games such as Mickey Mania, Crash Bandicoot, and Lego Star Wars. Bev is interested in making paintings, drawings, and digital interactive installations associated with places that have a memorable resonance. She's currently creating background images for sets on The Rumour Mill, a film directed by Bev Bush. Juliet Tzabar is MD and partner at Plug-in Media. She's been leading digital businesses since 2003 and specialized in delivering interactive entertainment projects with a broadcast tie-in, largely focused at the children and family audience. Plug-in Media has moved into original IP development, capitalizing on experience within the kids' content sector to create original productions and publish original IP across multiple platforms. T and Mo is a CBeebies website that is now being turned into a 50 times 7-minute animated TV series. Maria Stukoff is a driving force behind many of the transformative programs that she's set into motion. She's been a mentor and supported enterprises that strive for digital inclusion. She's also an avid film and animation fan. Currently, her role is head of digital at BBC Academy, and previously she spent 7 years at Sony Computer Entertainment Europe as head of PlayStation First. Her job was to inspire the next generation of animators, designers, and coders to create PlayStation content. Currently, she leads the digital learning and development functions across all levels. Finally, we have Una Marzorati, who's previously an animator on preschool series Whiffle and Fuzz and documentary Active Terror. She's a video editor, designer, and animator at Sega Europe. So I'd like to start by asking each of you a question. And this relates not only to animation and VFX, but games as well, and your experience across those industries as women. So Juliet, if you're happy, I'll start with you. In your experience working on animated TV series, some of which are converted into games, what details do you have to take into consideration when developing the narrative?
Okay, so, am I supposed to use the microphone? Yes.
I think it's better,
hello.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think really I'm going to approach Lindsay's question from two different perspectives. So my company makes apps and games derived from TV properties. Most of them are aimed at kids, and that's one side of the business. And then we have another side of the business where we're originating new IPs which are designed to launch in on a number of different platforms in different spaces, from broadcast animation to games. And so I can talk firstly about how we approach taking a TV show and making a game out of that, and then I can talk secondly about how we have made games and then developed a TV show from them. So in terms of converting a TV show to a game, for us it's really about getting the under the skin of that kind of brand, really. And there's two kind of elements to it. There's the kind of tangible elements where we really immerse ourselves in things like kind of brand bibles, so kind of things like music, the scripts, maybe the story synopsis, the character designs, the models, and all those elements we'll really kind of study and kind of get to grips with and start sort of using them in our game development process. But I would say that just using those elements doesn't necessarily end up with a really great game. And of course, it's a real truism to say that not all TV content makes a good game anyway, and not all game content makes good TV. But in order to create something that we feel is kind of more authentic and more kind of deeply embedded within the brand, I think it's the less tangible elements that we really like to kind of get into. So we kind of call it the brand DNA. It's really sort of looking at what the themes of a TV show might be, what the characters do, how they interact with the world around them, and what those elements, whether it's something, maybe it's something like cooperation, or whether it's something like creativity, those kind of themes are kind of hard to get your hands on, but they're actually kind of, I think, end up enabling you to deliver a more authentic game experience. So we've done a lot of work with Nickelodeon. I suppose a recent example, we've done 2 kind of flying game apps for preschoolers. One was a sideways scrolling flying carpet game for a brand called Shimmer and Shine. And actually, whilst that was quite a common sort of casual game mechanic, I think what really made it Shimmer and Shine was the fact that you were collecting magical gems, and then you had to draw patterns to unlock doors, and then once you'd collected all your gems, you could use those gems to kind of create special caskets and unlock rewards that way. And so for us, it was those kind of extra elements that were built onto the core game mechanic that really made it feel like an authentic brand experience. Approaching it from the other way, so we have a brand that's called TMO that launched 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, on CBeebies as a suite of 10 games. But when we approached it, and I think this is true of our development process overall, is that we'll begin by saying, well, we want to do something that's about, in this case, the theme, the relationship between a parent and a child. And so we didn't say we want to make a TV show, and we didn't say we want to make games. We just said, right, we're going to look at that area and we're going to develop it and think about those characters and how we might evolve them more, evolve those characters and give them kind of depth and meaning. And so we actually approached it from story first, rather than actually thinking, well, we're going to make this type of game or we're going to make this type of TV show. And that really enabled us to really develop a really deep understanding of the characters. I'm going to start coughing now.
That's really great. Thank you, Julia.
So from there, I think if you do that groundwork in the beginning, you can apply any story onto your characters, and you'll end up with a depth to take those characters anywhere you like. We didn't want to have one of those games where that we couldn't take it into TV because we didn't have that depth of character embedded within it from the start. I think that's what I was trying to say. Sorry, I'm losing my
great answer.
Water around. It would be.
Anybody have any water?
Is that some on the table? Can I just?
Thank you. So we were talking about narrative and story, and I think Juliet's laid down some really important points to take into consideration. If, Maria, I could move on to you, because we were talking about your position as a change maker in a large broadcasting academy. Narrative is important, but in terms of the skills that we all have internally, which skills do you feel are important for women in animation, VFX, and games? And how do you think we can incorporate them into our own career development?
Yeah.
Can you use the microphone?
Use the microphone. Hello. So I thought about that at first, both from a Sony perspective. My background, just recently gone into the BBC, where I'm working on the digital channels about learning and development for all our broadcast staff. And actually, what I came back to was really some of the stories that Anne actually related this morning. Is one of the biggest skill sets that we are, or should be, championing ourselves as the belief in ourselves. And I know this sounds really wishy-washy and like, oh my God, this is really weird. But it's this thing of this imposter syndrome she talked about. It's about creating the opportunities that you don't think are there and not following others. And I'm just going to qualify this. So I started off with animation. I did a lot of rotoscoping, old school animation processes, still on the Amiga computers, and I got my first animation done for hours on work, and I didn't know what to do with it. And what I learned was from another woman who said, why don't you take it into film festivals? And I had no idea what a film festival even was at that point. So I submitted my animation, and sure enough, it got shown. I was the last animation on the last day at 5 o'clock when everyone had left, and I think there were about 5-6 people left in the auditorium, including me. And I wept because I saw I wept in joy I wept because I saw my work on the screen. It's like, fuck, I've done this. I really did it. You know, and that was the starting point to just go, I can do whatever, I can do this. I have actually got my product, my animation on the screen. And from that moment, what I did was I looked for all the different festivals that were out in Australia at the time. I submitted more of my work. I got to start like these conferences here. You start meeting people again you haven't seen before, meet people you met 2 years ago on panels, and suddenly your network expands. Our conversation was, oh, where are the animation festivals in, you know, in Manchester, in Brighton, in London? Are they actually still running? And it's about a skill set that is about making your path and making your creativity count. Not anyone saying, well, do you have enough computer skills animation? Do you know how to use this software? You know, where in your software? Which course did you go to? Hang on a minute. Have you got a PhD to even talk here at this, you know, conference? Which I do. So it is about what skills do you know, which is about finding opportunities, talking to people, emailing. Hey, again, what Anne was saying, come up to people and say, oh, look, I've got this. Do you mind having a look? I usually have a lot of time to take a look at things and feedback. So there is a sort of thing, just to wrap this up, is the skills that enable you to talk to someone else about what you have, to celebrate what you can do. Skills is just something, you know, I've got skills to make a cup of tea, but if I don't know you like sugar, my cup of tea is not going to be any good to you. You find that out by talking to people. You find out what people like. You build those relationships, and that's how we all help each other to build a kind of skills environment that is not built on how someone certifies you. It's built on the fact that you actually have a creative background and you want to communicate something.
So that's great.
Soft skills, which I hate. Oh, I promise never to say that word again. But, you know, it is about this thing of champion and believing in yourself, and I can't underestimate how important that is.
So it sounds like ambition is a great skill to have, and believing in yourself. Thank you. It's a great answer. So move on now to, I know we've got a very ambitious panel, but Angela, very ambitious woman. Angela, as a writer and concept developer for an animated series, how do you go about constructing female characters? Because this is something that you're doing in your role with your company, but I think maybe you're not a businessman, you're not an ambitious, steaming businessman, but you're very creatively ambitious. So I think you seem appropriate to answer that question.
Oh, thank you. It's a really massive question. I know I've only got 3 minutes.
2.5.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to just applaud what you said then, because I think I am a good example of a non-linear path to where I've got to now, which is I've just launched a first show that I've created, which is a preschool animated comedy for children aged 4 to 7, and that's with Technicolor and Brown Bag Films, who are one of Europe's leading production companies. And yeah, I mean, I kind of a few years ago fell into children's media from being an illustrator, and then started to write. Met wonderful people through the Children's Media Conference, and I've had fantastic mentoring and such support from the women, you know, women especially in this industry, that when you ask me about how I go about constructing female characters, I just think, you know, I'm writing from first-hand experience. Number one, I'm a woman, and I want to do justice to all the fantastic women that I've met so far. I have 3 children, 2 teenage daughters. Obviously, I have them in mind when I'm writing, and I want to come up with, you know, really dynamic, aspirational characters. I think it's really important that we do that anyway across all media, but especially in preschool, where I've been working recently. You know, this is where we're showing girls how they can be in the world, what they can be, what, you know, I feel, you know, I'm working in cartoons. It's lovely and it's fun, but actually I take it very, very seriously, the responsibility to show really good, strong characters on screen. I was lucky enough to see Gina Davis, the actress, speak at Kids Screen in Miami in February. and she was amazing. She's obviously doing a lot advocating more women in every role across film and TV, and she gave this tremendous talk, and it was basically called "If She Can See It, She Can Be It." And I think although it's unthinkable for me personally to create sort of subordinate, wishy-washy female characters. That's just not me at all. But I think what I do naturally, I've definitely been thinking about more explicitly since seeing Gina Davis talk a year ago. I mean, one of the things is, so the show that I'm developing something at the moment, which is it's animated comedy action show, and it has at the core 5 girl gamers, and they're an elite team, and they've created this amazing world that is under threat from predatory malware that basically wants to shut down their fun. So they're protecting the fun force, they want the freedom to race around on 50-foot robotic cats. They want to, they just want to do everything. They want to do dance-offs. They just really want to have fun. And when the malware comes and basically challenges them, they have to then take part in a tournament to protect their world. So that's really kind of, we're talking about esports here. And I remember pitching it initially to people, top broadcast executives, and they were like, well, what is this about? They didn't understand that could be a thing. I mean, I enjoyed watching films like Whip It with my teenage girls, and I found that very inspiring. They were really inspired by Kick-Ass, but they were far too young to be watching Kick-Ass. It was totally inappropriate, but they saw the posters and they saw, the amazing girl in that, and they wanted to be like that. So I think I've also got a very murky history as a tank girl model, which I don't think I've ever told you about. Know that. Thank you. Yeah, it was when the Tank Girl movie was being made. They had auditions in London, and I knew people in journalism and blah, blah, blah. I ended up being a Tank Girl model for The Independent and a few music magazines. And that's the kind of thing that I'm really drawn to, and that's what my teenage girls are drawn to. And we need to create characters like that, but from a female perspective, that are not drawn by fellas or, it's just, I felt like I wanted to do something that had that spirit, but also was very feminist. I love Furiosa, say, from Mad Max, really strong, dynamic women. That's the characters I try to create.
You're getting influences from a lot of the other things that you see around you, and those filter through to the characters you create.
Yeah, definitely. And it never, that constantly as well.
Yeah.
So
that's really brilliant. Thank you.
I've got a million more things I could say. So if anybody's interested, I, again, really, like Maria, I'm very, very willing to talk to anybody and support and give some mentoring, because, I've been on the receiving end of that. It's brilliant.
Thank you. Well, I think Angela touched on some of the main points in creating female characters there. Bev, I wonder if we could move on to talk about the technical side of things. So in your experience developing pipelines across animation and games projects, what crossover elements do you think are important that we're aware of when it comes to making these, fabulous characters in these interactive experiences?
Right. Hi, everyone. Well, I think there's 2 elements to this. There's the sense of collaboration that's needed, but there's also the technical and software side of it. From the point of view of software, where games and animation meet, there's a lot of common denominators in the pre-production side. And then as you go into production, there's still some common ground. But then slightly into production, the 2 split into 2 different pathways. So the animators will be working in, say, 3D, and they'll be rendering, and they'll be using rigging and so on, whereas the games designers will be going into the Unreal or Unity real-time engine and rendering out their scenes and their characters in that side of it. And they'll still have common factors like lighting and camera and texturing and modelling and so on, but they've got different skill sets. And I think, obviously, you can't be a master of everything, and so, you know, it's hard to try and cover all bases. But because cross-platform entertainment is becoming more and more a thing that we have to be commercially successful, because kids aren't just watching television anymore. They've got multitudes of platforms that they play on. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice as well. And so we can't just provide a TV program, you know, and nothing else. You have to provide cross-platform entertainment. And so when you're creating an IP, you need to take these things into account, as well as merchandising and toys and manufacturing and so on. So you need to think of these things from the start when you're creating an idea. And it makes sense from my point of view to, oh, thank you very much. It makes sense to join forces, because you can't do everything yourself. So if you're a student, start making friends now with other students who are not just in animation, but also in music production, in acting, in screenwriting. We do this at Uclan, where I work, on the games course, where we encourage collaboration across a range of subjects, and it brings a dynamic into play that the students really get something valuable from. Steph McStayer, who's in the audience, is one of our MA students. She ran the Games Society last year, where she invited lots of students from all different areas to come and make games with her, and it was a really effective thing to do. From the point of view of collaboration, I think that's, even if you're in industry, you know, don't be in a bubble. Reach out to other people who have got those skills that will complement your IP to make it more successful. And that's talking commercially. But also, I think, you know, you should think about maybe not having to be commercial and be daring and do things that aren't necessarily to make money, but from passion. You know, I've just been working with my daughter over the summer holiday on a film that she's making in a mill in Derbyshire, a stop-frame animated film. And I got my hands mucky for the first time in 15 years, or, well, no, probably 30 years, actually, using clay and wood and building sets. And it was wonderful, you know, after working on a computer for all this time, to start doing that again and painting directly onto something. And it made me think, but why aren't we marrying these things together more? Like Lumino City, you know, where you've actually got making in reality, mixing with games, and it brings something special to the stage.
So that's great. Collaboration is part of what we're promoting, isn't it? It's part of the reason we're here, and we're lucky to be hosted here, but I do think there's a reason for it. Una, you've worked in animation and video, so this last question is for you. In your work as video editor, how has animation come into play when you're creating new projects?
I use animation, but normally I do editing on trailers, and we do like corporate videos. We film things for our trailers, and so I normally do the editing, but then I do animation on the titles, or I add some of my ideas. For example, I did like a zoom in a map of England just to show the location of our studio. So just try to give my input in projects, and I use my creativity wherever I can.
And is it true that you got the job partly because you had an animation background?
Yes, because the tools we use in the job are like editing tools, and we use After Effects a lot for animating. And it happened that I did an independent documentary. I designed it and animated it, and it went out at the time when I had my interview for this job. So I just showed it to my boss, and I said, "Wow, this is great. You're hired."
So Una is a living example of yet another woman who has worked in animation and games and very successfully crossed over the two and still works in both sectors. So we will be here later today. We're running a workshop at 4 p.m. I know we're running a bit behind, but we just wanted to share all of our experiences with you. And finally, I have some resources that you could turn to if you're looking to incorporate animation and VFX with games. There is an event called Festivus in London, which is games developers, animators, VFX people. I've put some websites up there that you can reference for organizations, other women's organizations that we collaborate with, government and other industry websites that you might find helpful. But we'll be around today, and do ask us any questions. We don't have time for questions, do we? But we will be here to answer your questions. So we look forward to speaking to you. Thank you very much for your time. Did you have an announcement? Thank you, panel.